In the middle of the Second World War, there was a technological accomplishment that made the Manhattan Project look easy, at least according to a handful of true believers. They claim Albert Einstein and other scientists designed a way to make a ship vanish into thin air, literally, and reappear somewhere else. Bizarre or not, the story of teleportation has inspired 2 movies, countless books, and numerous websites filled with rumors and conspiracy theories. What actually happened to the USS Eldridge in the fall of 1943? Join us for The True Story of the Philadelphia Experiment.
Busted-out warships don't usually make the pages of Playboy. Yet sandwiched between nude layouts in the October 1996 Greek edition of Playboy, there are pictures of a ship called the Leon. The article is not the usual stuff of Playboy either. It describes how the Leon, originally an American World War II destroyer, is being scrapped after a half-century of service and nearly 4 decades with the Greek Navy. But as it happens, this is no ordinary warship. The vessel the Greeks call the Leon has a legendary past life. Long ago, she is known as the USS Eldridge, back when she is supposedly the subject of an audacious experiment in teleportation and invisibility. As the story goes, the experiment takes place in the early years of World War II as a countermeasure against German U-boats. Allied convoys are a lifeline, delivering men, goods, and weapons in Britain's hour of need. But they are slow and clumsy, often made up of outdated, decrepit ships. The warships protecting them are a step behind enemy subs, as they have wider turning radiuses. A U-boat can easily outmaneuver a destroyer, slip into the convoy, and zero in on a defenseless target. In 1942 alone, more than 1,000 Allied ships are torpedoed and sunk. To combat the subs, the U.S. Navy develops a more maneuverable kind of warship called a destroyer escort.
A destroyer escort is an anti-submarine vessel, and it's sort of like a destroyer, except that it's not as fast. It has a much smaller turning circle.
Better maneuverability might not be the only thing in the works. Believers in the Philadelphia experiment say there are plans to give the destroyer escort the supreme advantage over submarines: invisibility. The alleged brainchild of none other than Albert Einstein. Einstein, in fact, works for the Navy at the time. Officially, he is working on ideas for conventional weapons, including torpedoes and underwater mines. But this is a cover for Einstein's real project, at least so say believers. Among them, a supposed eyewitness to the experiment named Carlos Allende.
According to Allende, the Navy used a variation of Albert Einstein's unified field theory, which at that point in time was supposedly uncompleted. And they used this unified field theory to bend light, to render the ship invisible because it was encased in this electromagnetic fog.
It is also from Allende that we learn the identity of the supposed test ship, a destroyer escort named the USS Eldridge. This leap into the technological unknown is not without its terrors, or so says Alfred Bielek, who claims to have been on the scientific team.
We were all very concerned, and I might add for 3 days prior, from about the 9th onward, many of us in that crew and working on that project had that strange feeling in the pit of our stomach that something was drastically wrong.
Nevertheless, in July 1943 in Philadelphia Naval Yard, the experiment is said to go forward. Powerful electromagnetic fields are engaged around the Eldridge, a skeleton crew aboard, Scientists and officers watching at a safe distance. The only other reported eyewitness is Carlos Allende, a deckhand on a nearby Liberty ship.
And what he claims he saw was a ship that was engulfed in a greenish, almost a Satan Elmo's fire, a green fiery fog.
As the electromagnetic fog swallows the Eldridge, strange optical effects manifest themselves.
And that as he watched and was able to even insert his arm into what he called the terrific flow of this energy, the ship disappeared.
To the amazement of all the onlookers, they not only had radar invisibility, they had optical invisibility.
The Eldridge reportedly achieves the supreme form of camouflage, invisibility. But then comes an even stranger effect, teleportation. Chroniclers of the Philadelphia experiment are divided on whether this happens that first day or in a follow-up test. But what they do agree on is that as the Eldridge starts to reappear, there is a sudden flash of light, that the ship vanishes from sight once again and simultaneously begins to reappear in the naval yard in Norfolk, Virginia, 300 miles away. After a few minutes, she dematerializes in Norfolk and reappears in the midst of another ozone-laden green fog in Philadelphia. Throughout this miraculous journey, the USS Eldridge emerges unscathed. But for her crew, it is a different story.
Men were molecularly attached to the ship, bonded with the ship as it was teleported. Men were driven insane, men caught fire, men went invisible. I mean, it was terrible, horrific things that happened to these crew members.
As we continue, the nightmare that follows and the alleged cover-up.
The family was never told the truth. They were told basically that they were lost at sea during the war as part of the war effort, which is, of course, a very plausible answer.
The idea of teleportation first surfaced in The Man Without a Body, written by Edward Page Mitchell in 1877. In the story, the machinery breaks in the middle of a teleportation, leaving the subject with his head and body separated. History's Mysteries will return on the History Channel.
Philadelphia Naval Yard, summer 1943. According to legend, the USS Eldridge returns after being teleported hundreds of miles. As she rematerializes out of a thick green fog, observers are electrified by the achievement, but their excitement turns to horror. Molecules have been scrambled, human with metal. Limbs have been fused to bulkheads. A gruesome sight.
First thing they found was 2 sailors buried in the steel deck. The bodies were literally buried in the steel, dying or near dead. 2 more were found standing upright in a bulkhead, also buried in the steel. 5th man with his hand buried in the steel up to his wrist.
Other sailors are simply missing, vaporized into thin air. For survivors, there are still other problems due to the powerful electromagnetic fields they have been exposed to.
Men were driven insane, men caught fire, men went invisible. I mean, it was terrible, horrific things that happened to these crew members.
The problem basically was that the human nervous system could not take exposure to that level of magnetic and electric fields, and it would cause neural damage.
Nerve damage so severe that some of the victims are reportedly institutionalized, while falsely classified as missing in action.
Their family was never told the truth. They were told basically that they were lost at sea during the war as part of the war effort, which is, of course, a very plausible answer.
In one version of the story, the men are susceptible to something called